Okay guys, Mollusk here, and I finally got to the last one of these things. We're taking a look at the Wave 4 Ten Thunders Master, Asami Tanaka. Just my initial impressions, and I think there's going to be a lot to this one. I'm a bit more familiar with Ten Thunders than I have been for some of the others, because they're somewhat a second faction for me. But any comments you wish to share, on abilities or tactics you've noticed, will be more than welcome. We'll kick things off with some backstory, which I think is probably my favourite of all the new Master releases. It's about a little girl who sees things that other people can't. Okay, you know, a bit emo kid River, but it seems that she grows up leading a more or less, you know, ordinary life, tending to her family shrine. She doesn't want much out of life, she just wants to have some kids, and presumably not be too lonely anymore. But all those dreams are cruelly ripped away from her. When her family is murdered, she's mutilated, and in desperation she lets the demon Amanjaku into her soul. And I think this is based on a Japanese legend, where in the original, the naive girl invites in the Oni, which then kills her and dances around in her skin, because why the fuck not? At least she got off lightly, as I don't think there were any tentacles involved. But yeah, back to it. Asami, looks like her pact with the demon means that she can now give birth to other demons out the back of her head, through a giant mouth that also allows her to eat almost anything whole. This is one messed up chick. So let's get into her card. We've got Defense 7, which is fantastic for most purposes, and a bit of a lackluster Willpower of 5. On a Master that's a bit suck, because there are some very nasty Willpower attacks out there. I'm thinking Lures among other things. And as a Lilith player I can tell you that Willpower 5 is a bit of a problem. But that's fine, I think the Ten Thunders have an upgrade that can bolster that, and a 7-6 defensive spread is, yeah, that's suddenly looking quite tasty. 10 wounds, nothing wrong with 10 wounds. Sounds like she's going to be eating into them, but Kalodi takes the same damage for the same AP boost, and he starts with 9 wounds, you greedy motherfuckers. So play her well, and I'm sure she'll be fine. Walk 5 is decent, charge 6 is, you know, average. Doesn't really sound like she's going to be making much use of that. She's got Rush of Magic, which is fan-dabby-dozy, especially on a summoning geared master. Really, that's awesome. Hard to kill, brilliant survival ability, especially when coupled with Soulstone Prevention and Self-Healing, which this girl can do a reasonable amount of. Third ability, and this one's going to be quite a part of her playstyle I foresee, Wrath of the Oni, allows other Oni within a short range of 4 to make her take 1 damage to get a basically a 1-action charge action. And this has some great AP efficiency, as you're getting 2 attacks for the action for the price of 1, and movement to the bargain. You're damaging your master, but as I said, it looks like she's got a fair amount of healing option, and I guess we'll get into things you can do with this a bit later on. The other thing to notice is she's an Oni, which doesn't have any specific synergies as far as I know as of yet, and she's the only master from this Wave 4 that has a cache of 3, which I wonder might be an indication of some of her power. I guess we'll have to see. But just going by the front of the card, which is of no worth whatsoever, she doesn't look particularly tough and seems a bit gimped in comparison to the other masters. So we go to the back of the card. We'll start with her attack actions. She's got another mouth to feed, good melee attack, or good accuracy, only a range of 1, engagement range of 1, but she doesn't seem to be particularly combat dedicated. Having said that, 2-4-6 is not to be snooted at in terms of damage, and she's got a built-in hide-in shadow trigger, and I've already spoken I think before about how that useful that can be. And there's a kind of weak assassinate trigger on a crow. It's got a fairly difficult target number duel of 11 against height, so most things are going to be needing a 9. But even if that goes through, the opponent can discard 2 cards to negate it. So this is more a hand-draining attack than it is for assassinating, I think. Her other attack is Reaching Tendrils, needs a 6 and is resisted by defense, got a short range of 8, but it's basically a lure, which if you get the trigger can allow her to reposition quite a good distance, 6 inches, and having a push on your master that can target anyone from range just gives so much versatility, so I like this. Especially considering Oni within 4 of her can make charges as 1 actions. You're bringing your models into positions where they can effectively cover a decent chunk of the board and flurry. Very nice. She's got a 0 action, Insatiable Hunger, needs a 6, and you can discard all ski markers within Pulse 2 to heal 2 damage for each marker discarded. So not only is that great for denying your opponent's schemes, it's also helping mitigate the damage you will be taking for getting your loving demon children all those tasty charges. And I foresee this working rather well with Tengu, who I think are Oni, which are cheap little minions that could be useful to have around to drop scheme markers. They can teleport to other scheme markers, hit scheme markers out of enemy models potentially, and also give her regen. Again, compensating for the low wounds and the damage that you want to be taking. She's also got an Oni's strength, also needs a 6, range of 8, allowing an Oni or minion to get focus +2. Focused is a freaking brilliant condition. Focus +2 I consider a bit overkill, and I'm not a very experienced 10 Thunder player, and I haven't yet really looked into how to do this effectively, but 10 Thunders seem to be all about getting as many positive flips into their crew as physically possible. And there are a number of models, I believe, that can add to this condition or shift it around to other models. So whilst on the face of it, it's probably quite good in itself, boosting the attacks of your big hitters, who are likely to be in combat ready to make use of it, whereas Asami might probably not be. And by that I mean she's using the AP to do this rather than to make her another mouth to feed attack. So yeah, but there's probably some more to it to that. We'll wait and see. And finally we get to her big deal action, the From the Maw They Come. So casting 6 with a built-in mask, and to work it needs another mask, and the target number is 10 plus the soulstone cost of a model that you want to summon in, which has to be both an Oni and a minion, which currently means Jorogumo, Obsidian Oni, Tengu, sadly not the Dawn Serpent, and presumably these yokai that are new in her box. The model comes in with full wounds, it's slow of course and can't interact, and it also has this condition called Flicker, which is stackable, and if the model loses Flicker, which ticks down at the end of each turn and can be removed by condition removal, the model gets sacrificed. And this has just reminded me that the Devour Whole is a sacrifice, not a kill, so bear that in mind for particular schemes. But back to Flicker, so your model comes in with +1 Flicker, but you also discard all corpse and scrap markers within 1 inch of the model when you summon it in, to increase the value of its Flicker up to a maximum of +3. So what we've got here is a cast which can summon a model at 6 inch range. It looks like it's going to require at least an 8 of masks, which is quite a high card, but the big thing is that it doesn't require any markers to do the summoning initially off of, which is described as, I think, resourceless summoning, and she could potentially do this 3 times a turn, although the resources needed to do that would be pretty astronomical. So what I guess would be most likely is using a big card to summon in a big model like a Jorogumo, which at its most basic is going to have 1 turn of life. You're going to take a damage on Asami to give it a 1 action charge, quite probably with a focus +2 condition, and it's going to go and wreck some face for free. Consider bringing Chaki along for some condition removal to get rid of that slow, and you're going to beat some face. If there happens to be corpses or scrap lying around when you summon it, then you can increase the number of turns that the model is going to be around causing havoc. Bear in mind that most models are only around for a maximum of 5 turns anyway, well not maximum but average, or whatever, you know what I mean. Getting a good model in a decent position for a few turns is well worth the investment of a soulstone or a high card or both. It's probably also well worth considering what schemes and strategies are going on. Obviously beefing up your Flicker condition is going to be something you're going to be wanting to doing in things like Reconnoiter and Turf War, but for other things like Reckoning and Headhunter, where I don't think you score or generate heads if the model is sacrificed, you're basically increasing your chance to score points and giving your opponent nothing in return. So having only +1 Flicker is not necessarily a bad thing. Thinking about upgrades, Misdirection might be quite good, as she can bring things in close to her to make sure she's got targets to pass damage off onto, and she wants to be near her Oni anyway, at least before they go running off to eat face. So that could be quite good. Wings of Wind I like. Makes her more mobile, makes her crew more mobile, so you can get into position with those markers or for those charges, whatever. As I mentioned, the willpower buffing one might be useful if you're drawing against Neverborn or Rezzers, but I suspect they're going to have a lot of competition from her specific upgrade, as these look pretty great. So we've got Feigned Weakness, which allows it to summon a model when enemy scores VP. Depending on the details of that, sounds like it could be a great power leveler and really help her stay in the game. A heavenly design gives a replacement effect, which I don't need to tell you are great for keeping your master alive and getting them into position to do their nasty work. And it also lets her place a scheme marker next to friendly models that get sacrificed, so those summoned models just keep giving. Nefarious Pact is one that I'm particularly looking at because it gives her more card drawing, which is just gold for summoners, and prevents enemies from being able to remove conditions from her crew. I don't know what range that would be, but it sounds a bit like Yan Lo's Soul Porter. So Yabu, sucks to you, Johan. That Flicker 3 Oni is sticking around. So yeah, I think Asami's going to be quite impressive. Summoning is probably one of the most powerful mechanics in the game, if not the most powerful. She doesn't look super durable, but she's got a lot of options for healing, and I suspect there'll be a good number of threats on the board to occupy the opponent. So with a bit of cautious play, I think she's going to be sticking around. The Reaching Tendrils is brilliant, as I found one of the things I always seem to lack in or really miss in a 10 Thunders list is the ability to push models around, and she's not a pushover in combat either. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed. I think she's going to be pretty strong, and it looks like you're going to have quite flexible options to take either a lot of smaller models and summon in the big ones as you need them, or the opposites, take lots of big hitters and get in some Tengu for scheme running just when you need them. So yeah, nice, very nice. The box set also looks really good. Do like some of those models. Asami herself is a bit weird, but it's kind of growing on me now, and I'm very curious to see what the back of her head looks like. The henchman looks pretty cool, and no doubt based on another Japanesey legend. Looks like something out of Pan's Labyrinth. And she's billed as a fast melee henchman who can charge without needing line of sight, useful with Asami's abilities, and can prevent enemy defensive triggers, which is always a pain in the ass. These Yokai Oni minions, the little homicidal Wizard of Oz monkeys, look like they'll be quite versatile mid-range 5 Soulstone models maybe. And then this Amanjaku totem fella, I mean that, I'm going to be honest, that doesn't really do much for me, but I guess he's kind of funny. He looks like he can provide cover, which is always useful, and increase the value of conditions on models, such as, for example, maybe Flicker, or Focus, or Defensive. Looks like he's going to be fairly useful. I haven't really mentioned Obsidian Oni, but it looks like you won't be able to use them to charge forward as little mobile bombs, as they don't explosively demise when sacrificed, but their Flames from the Heavens does allow you to place scrap and scheme markers in base contact with enemies from 8 inches of range, which could be quite synergistic with Asami, and I think they can heal non-masters, for example, combat henchmen. So yeah, pretty interested in this master. I of course like the demon theme, but she is competing a bit with Yan Lo as a summoning master. I mean, clearly she's better at that specifically, but I do like Yan Lo, so we'll see. We'll have to see. Those were my first initial a priori thoughts, and I'd be interested to know yours if you care to share them. Take care.